The Holocaust is a huge impediment to my faith, and that of many others, of course. It's hard to trust a God who allowed Nazis to knock on your door in the middle of the night and haul you and your family off to Auschwitz. Please help us to understand. And this is from Pete. You hear that, a lot of people say that, how can I bother with and trust this God how does he allow something like the Holocaust to happen? Of course, there's people today who wonder why he allows what's going on with abortion to happen as well. But the question is, who's really responsible for these things?
Yeah, and of course the answer is the Nazis are responsible for it, not God. But his question is why does God allow people like Hitler's or Stalin's to do these horrible, horrific acts that affect millions of lives? In one word, freedom. And of course, if God does not allow Hitler or Stalin or all of their thousands of henchmen the freedom to be cruel, inhuman, dominating, self-worshiping, real rats, if he doesn't allow them to do that, then he's not going to allow them the real possibility of choosing love. You can't just have a halfway part for freedom, right? So, I mean, if you're going to give freedom to human beings, and you're going to give freedom to human beings in general, you have to give them the potential to do unloving things, the potential to be cruel, as well as giving them the potential to choose a loving activity. Now, you could just, many people have asked me, well, gosh, I mean, in the case of Hitler or Stalin, couldn't he have just made an exception? I mean, here's a guy going full bore to persecute millions of people. The answer really is, where does God draw the line? Okay, now Hitler, he's a bad one. I'm going to zap him and give him the automatic lobotomy. He's too bad. And Stalin, too. He's got to go too. But wait a minute. There's all these other henchmen waiting to stand in line. And then all of a sudden people are looking on and going, wow, there are lots of people who look like they were going to do bad things. They're suddenly getting lobotomized and killed, right out of the blue. And of course, wait a minute, I better be a good guy, because of course I could get zapped too. Right. And immediately, the whole idea of freedom is being compromised, because now, of course, you see, okay, you have the freedom to do something unloving, but don't contemplate it too long or in too great a way, because you too will get zapped, by the divine zapper. Now, of course, God can't do it that way. He's got to enable us then through, divine providence and through the goodwill of human beings. He's got to enable us to work through this thing with his grace. Now, you might say to yourself, well, where was God, in helping us, during World War II to overcome these things? I mean, if you are a student of military history, you just have to look at the Battle of D-Day and you say, where was God? He was all over the place there. No, he wasn't controlling the battle. No, he wasn't going to take away the courage and the valor that was necessary and the sacrifices that were made in order to do that. But boy, the little tilts of historical progression that enabled us to win and to not be pushed back. Can you imagine Hitler sleeping in until whatever hour, he's given strict orders. Rommel's back on a family holiday. I mean, you start to get the picture like, hey, something's kind of interesting here. I mean, the Battle of Midway, are you kidding me?
I was going to bring up Midway,
we come out of that.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. I mean, there's divine providence all over the place. I mean, even in the Battle of the Bulge,
as well,
when you think, you're just down for the count. But yes, there's grace tilting things. I truly believe that. The Holy Spirit's working. But still, there's got to be valor. There's got to be courage. There's got to be love. There's got to be self-sacrifice. Human beings are going to be involved in the overcoming of evil. At the end of the day, we're stuck in a cosmic struggle between good and evil. And you know, it's not just about what's going on the battlefield. There's a cosmic struggle between good and evil. And we're involved in it. Our free actions are involved in it. Yes, all those people who are just killed innocently in the Holocaust, will God raise them to salvation? Who could imagine otherwise? I mean, they are innocents who are being plumbed to the, you know, plunged to their death. And when we look at this kind of activity, we have to say, you know, yes, most of these people are innocents. Most of them are not repudiating God. Most of them were faithful people, faithful Christians, faithful Jews, faithful, you know, people who were just literally called out of their lives by cruel individuals. Will they be taken into heaven? I completely think they will. And, you know, so long as they were capable of throwing themselves on the mercy of God through, you know, the sufferings that, you know, that they endured. No difficulty with that. So we got to take the bigger picture. We can't force ourselves into that really narrow viewpoint where we're focused on the cruelty, but we don't look at the resurrection, where we're focused on the historical vagary of Hitler's rise to power without looking at all the ways in which, quote unquote, divine providence tilts the balance over the course of history to transform great acts of love and valor and courage into a victory for the good that's going to lead to the greatest generation, right? We can't take the bigger part of the picture out of it. We have to look at the full thing in trust, in faith. Right. We have to look at the full picture. And when we do, I think you will find that this is a remarkable kind of, you know, life into which we've been lived, a remarkable history into which we've been called, and we have a big part to play in it, and it's going to be a sacrificial part too. It's something where it contains nobility, courage, love, compassion, empathy, prayer, and faith.
Right, isn't that the part? As you say, we've got a big part. In some ways, by blaming God, we take ourselves off the hook. We say, well, why didn't he take care of this? I mean, rather than turning around and saying, well, what are you doing? What are the people in Germany did at that point in time that they could have done? What about the people in the United States and other parts of the world? And also, I'm wondering, this is a question, let me ask you, because this I've always thought about too, is the idea, sometimes we like to personify things and say, well, Hitler was a bad guy, or the Nazis were bad people. They were, but they weren't unique. Many of them were average people who were led astray. And so this idea that there's evil out there, that good people can be coerced and led in the right situations to do very, very bad things.
Yeah, I think there's a tremendous seduction. You know, I mean, you wonder why St. John Paul II was always concerned about culture, right? And you know, keeping the culture high-minded, keeping the culture faith-filled, because of course we know the power of culture. So you've got this Nazi culture that comes about, right? Hitler has a few successes, right? He convinces everybody he's a winner, right? And of course, the seeds of Hitler's destruction are already being sown when he's invading Russia, right? Already, right, the tone is being set, and by the time he fails at Stalingrad, it's clear, you know, he's going to lose this war. But in the meantime, look at all these people who've been co-opted by the lies, who have been co-opted by all of the sanitizing that Goebbels did, you know, for, you know, and was terrible kinds of propaganda, and they were proficient at it, but they didn't keep their faith alive, right? In many cases, they kind of submitted to Hitler's worldly, dark logic rather than going back to their Christian roots and their Christian faith. It was a weakening of the general culture away from Christianity, away from faith, away from compassion and love, right? That idea of goodness, and we started getting into what I call the level 2 victory culture. We're gonna, you know, we're superior race. You have to believe, oh, I feel good about being a superior race, and we're gonna have victory. We're gonna be the world dominators. Ooh, I feel really good about being a world dominator, and so forth and so on. And then you give way. And the point, of course, is, yes, John Paul II is so correct, right? You can't give way to the dark culture. We have to instead be the lights of the culture of light. We have to be the courageous force that keeps the culture and the cosmic struggle between good and evil, the culture, on the side of the good, on the side of light, on the side of Christ, on the side of compassion, on the side of nobility, on the side of self-sacrifice, on the side of justice, and on the side of mercy. That's what we're called to do, the side of Christian faith.
Right.
And if we can do that, if we can keep the light alive, then absolutely we're going to have a role to play. Not just in our individual lives with individual people. We're always got to be looking at, how can I have an influence on the culture? How can I make sure we don't slip into the darkness once again? And it can happen. It can happen all over again because we're free.